What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another Fantasy Football Scout YouTube video with me, Lee, and this is Sam from FPL Family. Now we're getting up to Game Week 31, Sam. Game Week 30, been and gone. It's in the rearview mirror. We are doing our points prediction video as we always do every week. How did we get on in Game Week 30?
Well, first of all, I should start by just acknowledging Ian, who was in the comments of our last video saying that I can't count and that actually I've won more than I said I had. So
really?
He says...
Don't make this any worse for me, Ian.
So Ian says, and I've tried to work it out, but half of the season notes are in this book.
Right.
And I can't find the original half of the season book. So you're going to get away with it on the basis that I can't find my other notebook at the moment.
So I'm just losing badly as opposed to woefully.
So Ian, if I find the other book, I will rectify the scores. But at the moment, we'll ride it out with it being 11... 11-5 going into last week. That's what the score was going into Game Week 30.
Right.
Game Week 30, I had the overs, you had the unders.
Can't believe
No,
it.
he wasn't trying to take any off you. He was just trying to give me another one.
Can't believe this. If you're going to get in the comments, can we please have a little bit of love for Team Lee? Oh, we're so far behind. Need some love.
Oh, well.
Don't take any more points off. Go on. Anyway, Game Week 30.
Maybe I shouldn't tell him what happened last week. So you had Alonso as one of your unders for last week. Got you 3 points because got the assist. Just a shame that Chelsea decided to get absolutely smashed by West Brom.
Absolutely no idea how that happened. You can look at every single stat under the sun, but sometimes West Brom gonna West Brom.
The thing is, you did West Brom gonna West Brom.
They were like peak Brazil.
They were.
Some of the finishing was unbelievable against
Particularly
Chelsea.
that fourth goal. But you did pick the right Chelsea defender because at least he got something.
Got three, yeah. Okay.
But actually, he was really unlucky in that game. Could have got so many more assists and could have had a goal himself. That was just unlucky. You had Lucas Moura, who, I mean, Spurs did Spursy things as usual. Unlucky.
You wouldn't pick Moura now for the double coming up,
no,
would you?
I don't think you would. I think if you're going into the double, you're going with Kane and Son and potentially a defender.
A Reguilon or a Lloris maybe. It's not Bale either now, is it?
It's definitely not Gareth.
It's not Gareth, is it? All right.
And then you went with Richarlison as your forward of choice, but what happened with Everton? They were really disappointing in that game as well. So 7 points for you this week.
Poor.
Bit meh.
Poor.
I had Luke Shaw, who lost his clean sheet because Brighton managed to nick one with Welbeck, which was... I wasn't really expecting that. I was expecting a clean sheet there for Luke Shaw this week. I had Rafinha, who got an assist, 6 pointers. That was nice. And of course I had the man, the myth, the legend that is Harry Kane up top with his brace and 13-point haul. So 21 for me. That makes it 12-5, or if you listen to Ian, 13-5. But we'll stick with 12 for now.
Have the bookies suspended betting on this now? How many game weeks have got left to go? How many more do you need to make this mathematically impossible for me?
There's 8 to go. So one more, and you can only tie. 2
It's
more.
fairly reflective of how my FPL season's gone at the moment.
2 more and it's mine. But this week you do have advantage because you do have...
Oh, because that's really... I've had a massive advantage having the overs before.
You have the overs, so you do have an advantage. But yeah, let's see what Game Week 31
All right,
has to offer.
As usual, guys, for Game Week 31, we'll be looking at 3 over 10% picks, who we consider to be the top picks for the game week, and then we'll look at 3 under 10% picks, who we consider to be the differentials for the game week. I've got the overs, you've got the unders. I should therefore have the advantage, but as Ian in the comments will tell you, that doesn't necessarily mean a victory for #Team Lee. But I'm going to stick by a player who has massively improved in a team and a defence that has massively improved, at least in the Premier League. Thoughts on the Champions League game against Real Madrid in just a second. But at least in the Premier League, particularly against Arsenal, AlexanderArnold had a very good game. Trent was, in air quotes, back to his best, in my opinion. It's coincided with Fabinho going back into that central defensive midfield role. Even centre-halves like Kabak and Phillips, who are clearly not good centre-halves. We've seen that in the past. They are 4th, 5th, 6th choice defenders at our club, centre-half. So you're not expecting them to be Van Dijks, quite frankly. But nevertheless, a good central defensive midfielder can make the 2 centre-halves look good on their day. And Fabinho, I think, is doing that by protecting them in such a way that makes them look all right. So defensively, suddenly Liverpool's starting to look good. So the clean sheets starting to come back, at least in the Premier League. And you can't get over that ball that Trent has whipped in for Jota's first goal against Arsenal. That was Trent back to his best. And what I particularly liked about it was the celebration afterwards. It was a real, I don't know, just relief and everything coming out of it.
Like he'd made a point.
Almost. And of course he's got the England place to fight for as well, which is something I think should be in the back of it's definitely going to be in the back of his mind. I personally think Gareth Southgate's mad if he doesn't take him, but there are a lot of people now starting to say that maybe Trippier and others are better than him. I don't know. But anyway, Trent gets the call up for me this week. However, your thoughts very briefly on his performance in the Champions League against Real Madrid, because that's not what we want to see if we're going to pick him in FPL.
No, and I must admit, I was totally in your camp, and everything that you just said, I was like fully on board with that until I watched them in the Champions League, and then I was like, actually, was it that Arsenal were really bad and it made Liverpool seem better, or enabled Trent to be better? Because when he came up against Real Madrid, I mean, he was embarrassed during that game.
He's not going to play Vinicius Junior every week, though.
No.
And he was very good player.
Excellent.
But the point you're making is sound, I think, insofar as the two performances I'm largely basing this pick on are the Wolves and the Arsenal game. Now, Wolves were fine, but,
they weren't Real Madrid.
On their day, can have a bad day. And Arsenal really did have a bad day. So how much are we saying, for particularly those wildcarding, looking at Trent Alexander-Arnold, if you're wildcarding in 31, do you bring him in because he's back, or do you hold off because he's not?
If I was wildcarding, I think I would go with him.
Okay.
On the basis that the fixtures are nice enough that, he, as we've just said, he isn't going to come up against the Real Madrid stars every week. Okay, he is again next week, but for the main part of the rest of this season,
sure,
fixtures are quite nice for Liverpool. Well, they're very nice for Liverpool. So I think if I was wildcarding, I would take a chance on him. And I think for this week, he is a nice pick. I suspect that what you're saying about the Euros is right. I think there's going to be a lot of players, Trent at the heart of them, who really need to impress over the next 8 games if they want to make sure that they get that spot on the plane.
And I'm also taking a bit of a gamble that Jack Grealish is still not going to be fit. I still think there is something not right with Jack Grealish, otherwise he'd have been back by now. Dean Smith is being purposefully vague for us FPL managers. No, he's being a pain. Let's say it how it is with his news about Jack Grealish. But if Grealish is back and playing on that left-hand side, expect Trent to have a difficult game, I suggest. But I'm backing Trent to do all right against Villa. You've gone for Conor Coady, 5.4% ownership, and another player that I think wildcard 31 game week 31 wildcarders will be looking at him.
Yeah, I mean this is in many ways fixture driven. Plays against Fulham, who have only scored 3 goals in the last 6 game weeks. So they're not exactly scoring a lot of goals, although they are playing a lot better.
They are, yeah.
But they're not scoring hundreds of goals, and therefore the clean sheet looks likely. And if you're wildcarding, multiple clean sheets look likely when you look further forward across the fixture list. He's also shown some attacking threat, of course. In the last 6 weeks, he's had 3 points returns. 2 of those were clean sheets and 1 of them was a goal. I think we have in recent weeks seen a bit more of an attacking Conor Coady. He's been much further forward than he has been in recent weeks gone by, or in recent seasons rather. So I think there's potential there. The slight concern I have is the injury again to Johnny Otto. I do worry about the impact of losing him.
So unlucky, that guy, honestly.
Absolutely. And we saw at the beginning of the season that Wolves were a lot shaky defensively without him. It does play on my mind a little bit going into this fixture and picking Coady in the points predictors this week. But he's not going to be there, and what does that mean in terms of that defence? They didn't look great against West Ham on Monday night defensively.
Well, that's because he rolled out the back 4. If you said to me, Wolves are going to play that back 5 system throughout the rest of the season with those fixtures, 100% I'd be on Conor Coady or anyone, maybe even thinking of the double up with those fixtures. But that back 4, I think, gets exposed too easily.
Plus, they're not going to come up against Lingard every week, and he's been on absolute fire. So, coming up against a Fulham side that aren't scoring a lot of goals, I think Conor Coady's a nice pick.
All right, and then longer term, Sheffield United, Burnley, West Brom, Brighton. The fixtures look fantastic for Conor Coady, don't they, going forward? So a nice pick this week. I like it. And a good pick for the longer term if you're thinking of wildcarding. 7.1 million and 16.9% ownership for a man who has scored literally, as we sat down to record this video, Chelsea have, I think, scored in the Champions League, and Mason Mount has got the goal. In, therefore, good goal-scoring form, takes the free kicks, gets the assists. Was the game against West Brom a bit of a blip? And, I mean, I think so, yes. That's why I've picked Mount, and I do expect them to bounce back, Chelsea. What do you think? Do you think we'll get an instant reaction?
I do, 100%. I think there was a lot of changes in that Chelsea side going into game week 30. With, the lack of Rudiger, the lack of Mount in the starting 11, I kind of looked at that Chelsea team and thought, Oh, that's a bit of an odd one. But Tuchel, to his credit, came out, absolutely owned it. Was like,
he did, yeah,
I got it wrong. Puts Mount on, and he immediately made a difference. For me, I don't care how many millions of pounds Chelsea have spent over the last year on forward-thinking players. This guy is the one I'd pick in my FPL team all day long. I think he is a phenomenal talent. I think he was great for England. It wasn't just, I've been playing well for Chelsea. He continued that into international duty, came back from international duty, gets benched, comes on and is like...
Doesn't seem to be flagging either. There's a lot of players kind of thinking about, not that Chelsea are thinking about the beach, but a lot of players in other clubs starting to feel the effects of a long and difficult season physically and mentally. But Mason Mount seems to be away on international duty, buoyed by that, goes into the Champions League quarter-final, difficult tie against Porto, gets the goal.
Looking forward to the Euros probably as well, because it's going to go, I think.
Probably. So we've got plenty plenty for Chelsea to play for, but also plenty for Mason Mount to play for. Crystal Palace away is a pretty nice fixture. Yeah. We know what they're like in terms of defending set pieces. Yeah. I'd back Mount for a few points this week.
Yeah, and of course, Chelsea won't be down to 10 men every week. So.
That's very true. Yeah, it really hampered them last week, didn't it? Really hampered them. Just squeaking under the 10% ownership is a player that I know that you've picked in the past, previous seasons. You've liked picking James Ward-Prowse. What are we saying about this game week? So West Brom, are we going to get a repeat performance?
Are we getting Brazil or are we getting
What
West
are we going to get? Are we going to get the West Brom we saw last week, or are we going to get Sam Allardyce back to his old tricks? And what makes you pick Ward-Prowse over anybody else in that Saints team?
So Southampton are second for goals scored from set pieces this season with 12.
Largely thanks to him.
They're only, Everton have the same number as them. They're only beaten by West Ham, who have 16. He's on set pieces. West Brom have a habit of giving away set pieces, so I think there's potential there, which is part of the reason I picked him. He got 2 goals in the 2 games that they had in Gameweek 27, and since then hasn't really got anything in terms of FPL points, but he has looked impressive. And I think since Danny Ings has returned, they showed a bit of fight and a bit of character in Gameweek 30, coming back to eventually take the game. So I think there was just a little bit of spirit in Southampton. He's the captain and is on set pieces. It is a bit of a rogue pick because we don't really know what we're going to get from West Brom. If West Brom come out like they did against Chelsea, then they're going to have a tough time, Southampton. But I don't think they will. I think West Brom took heart from the fact that Chelsea were down to 10 men and they used that to their advantage. They had a bit of spirit and belief in themselves then. Can that continue? Remains to be seen. But I think set-piece potential for me makes James Ward-Prowse quite an interesting pick for this game week.
Okay, well, Saints going away to the Hawthorns. I do think it's a good pick. I think when Armstrong plays well, he plays well. I think when the unit plays well together, and Armstrong does a lot of the donkey walk, freeing Ward-Prowse up to be more creative in that final third. And you're right, if he's got a player like Danny Ings that can finish the chances that he's creating, absolutely he's in for assist points.
Yeah.
He didn't pick up a lot of points when Danny Ings wasn't around. Che Adams, not quite such a natural finisher as Danny Ings, I think it's fair to say. Although he has shown a bit of form recently, but I don't want to do Che Adams too much of a disservice there. But certainly Ings
sold him.
Since I sold him in FPL, Che Adams has actually done all right. Not going back there, by the way, on the wildcard. But Danny Ings being back, I think, definitely makes Ward-Prowse a reasonable option. So 9.8% owned, still pretty much a differential for James Ward-Prowse. I'm going to go with Vardy up top. One of the reasons for picking Vardy is we have finally got to a points prediction video where we haven't picked Harry Kane as our over 10%. I feel like, and again, I was looking at it, I was just like, oh God, even home to United, you'd pick.
I mean, in the reverse of the fixture, he got a brace and an assist, if you remember.
I know, and I thought, I'm not going on another points prediction video and picking Harry Kane. I've got to pick somebody different.
We're going a whole points predictions with no Spurs.
But do you know also what? Having decided I'm not going to go Harry Kane,
there's not a lot up there.
It was then quite difficult. It was then quite difficult, and it took every fibre of me to just go, no, I'm not having it. West Ham away, a difficult game for Leicester, no doubt about it. But I am heavily scouting him because the fixtures for Leicester after this is West Brom, Palace, Southampton, Newcastle. Look really, really good. And with the return of Maddison, which I think is key. Now listen, West Ham away is not going to be easy for Vardy.
They are better away from home.
Not going to be easy. They are better away from home. Got a better record away from home. But I think Maddison back is absolutely huge. I'm torn on my Game Week 31 wildcard whether to go for Vardy or for Maddison. I think Maddison's got potential to be a really nice differential because Vardy's sitting there at 18.6% ownership. Still quite high for me. And also just over 10 million. Thoughts on Vardy?
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider in this game week is that obviously West Brom were without Declan Rice, and we saw in the last few game weeks, and in particular, I've just said that Wolves were pretty poor defensively against West Ham, and they were, but the West Ham defence collapsed again in game week 30, conceded another couple of goals. Vardy is a poacher. If you give him opportunities, if you make mistakes, he will punish you, and particularly if he has his partner in crime in James Maddison back in the team. And Maddison came on in game week 30, seemed to play fine in the minutes that he got, so I suspect he'll start in game week 31.
Yeah.
And as we've said, away from home, Leicester's so much better than they are at home. They'll also want to recover from last week and get momentum back because they will not want to end the season how last season ended.
No, I don't think so. The way I see, or one of the things we might see in that game, is I don't see where the outball is for West Ham now. So with Antonio out injured as well, we'd wait to see how long he's out for. But I think he done a hamstring last game. So you'd hasten to guess that's not, a short-term injury. Of course, Sebastian Haller has gone. So, okay, absolutely, Lingard can play out there. Yarmolenko can play. They've got plenty of players that can come in and fill in the void. But none of those, I would say, are real kind of hold the ball up. And what Leicester are really good at is Leicester will push you back. They'll force you back into a position where you just can't get out. And if you haven't got that out ball as well, I can foresee West Ham having to take quite a few waves of attack from Leicester. If Leicester can get a bit of a sustained period of pressure, I think that West Ham will crack eventually.
Yeah.
And I do think Maddison is going to be key to that with his deliveries from set pieces, if they can get fouls in around the area. But equally, I'm backing Vardy to be in there, Fox in the box, classic Vardy doing what he does best.
Got pens too.
And he's got the penalties, where I think they'll see a lot of the ball in those sorts of areas, Leicester. So there we go. Going for Vardy. Could have gone for Iheanacho as well, who's also in form. But I think he's under 10% owned kill, actually, Iheanacho still.
In my category.
Going to go for Vardy. In the under 10% owned, you've gone for Lacazette. So Arsenal looking, quite frankly, pretty awful against Liverpool. I mean, we sat here a second ago and talked about Trent was great, Liverpool back. But I think we also said the Gooners were pretty bad in that game. Again, are you expecting a reaction against a team that are dead and buried, frankly, Sheffield United? I know they've got to go away to Sheffield United, but Arsenal got to be favourites for that game by some distance.
Surely. I mean, this one is definitely a fixture thing. I've picked Lacazette on the basis that he is the best option, in my view, at Arsenal. 3 goals and an assist in the last 5 game weeks, so he's on a relatively decent run of form.
Sure.
Rotation is a concern. He has had minutes in most games, but he doesn't always start. But he does sometimes get points off the bench, and therefore that kind of, you can maybe make peace with the rotation as a result of that. He is, I wrote down that he's top for goals at Arsenal in the last 6 game weeks with 3. All the others have only got 1 each, such as Aubameyang and Odegaard. He's also top for XG and XGI in the same period of time. So I think if you're going Arsenal, you're going Lacazette. He's also so much cheaper than Aubameyang, and at a time where you've kind of alluded to it before, there is a bit of difficulty picking strikers at the moment. Leave Harry Kane aside. The others aren't necessarily performing at the level that we have seen in the past. Watkins has dropped off a bit since we've lost Grealish. Obviously, if Grealish comes back, that might change. Bamford hasn't been in the same kind of form that he has been previously. I worry a little bit about Iheanacho now that Maddison's back in his minutes. So all of those kind of lesser price tag players are starting to be a bit tricky. Maybe Lacazette, with a fixture against Sheffield United and a fairly decent run of fixtures after, might be a decent option.
Do you think the youngsters come back in for Arsenal straight away? The Sakas, the Smith Rowes?
Well, I think
if they're fit enough.
If they're fit enough, I think Arteta's mad not to play them because they don't look half the side without them.
Yeah, eyes on the Europa League. So we are recording this before they play in Europe. So of course you run the risk of picking a player that is yet to play in Europe. Although I've also picked Mason Mount. So plenty of risky picks in this week's price prediction video. The bookies have suspended odds on the Lee versus Sam price prediction videos. It is clearly in the bag for Sam. 2 more wins, and then these videos are just for fun between now and the end of the season. But get in the comments below. Let us know whether you're hashtag Team Lee, hashtag Team Sam. Ian, I look forward to seeing your comments, trying to take more points from me this week. Thank you, sir, for that. Leave us a like before you go, guys. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you get access and notifications whenever any Fantasy Football Scout stuff goes live. And we'll see you next week for the results of this week's price prediction. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.